Hi, I'm Paul, and today I'm going to teach you how to edit with DaVinci Resolve. The Edit page features all of the editing and trimming tools you need to assemble a story. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to start a project from scratch. We're going to import and organize our media, we're going to edit and trim clips, we're going to add transitions, effects, and even do a little animated titling. So let's jump in and get started. When you launch DaVinci Resolve, you're presented with the Project Manager. This window shows you all of the projects on your system. We're going to start with an empty project, so I'm going to double-click, which takes us right to the Edit page. On the top left portion of the Edit page, you'll see the Media Pool, which is where we keep all of our clips and organize our media. Now, there are several ways to import and organize your media in DaVinci Resolve, but I think the easiest is to just drag the clips in from the Finder. So let me do that. I'm going to go to the Finder, and here I've got a folder full of media. I've also got subfolders that have additional clips in them. I can select all of this, drag them right into DaVinci Resolve, and when I do, a window opens up. Now this is asking me if I want to set the project format, frame rate, and resolution to match the clips that we're importing. So this is a huge time saver that helps you get started without having to worry about setting up your project. I'm going to click on Change to change the project to match the clips that we're importing. And then let's take a look at our user interface. The media pool at the top left includes those folders that we had in the Finder. So the master bin contains everything. Then there's the audio folder, the end credits folder, and you can see them here in icon view. I can turn the sidebar on and off. I can view things in list form if I'd like to. I can even turn on and off different columns and customize the list view however I'd like. You can reorder columns just by simply dragging and dropping them and then saving your custom sets. You can also show a film strip that lets you scrub through the clips right here in the media browser. I'm going to go back to icon view because that's how I prefer to work, and we're going to just turn the sidebar on again. All right, let's load a clip into our source viewer. There are two viewers at the top of the screen. The one on the left is a source viewer, and this is where we mark clips in and out and decide which portion of the clips we're going to edit with. Then you've got a timeline viewer on the right and the timeline at the bottom. The toolbar in the middle of the screen contains all of the most commonly used tools, and we'll get to those as we go through this tutorial. Right now, I'm going to add a new bin by right-clicking in the media pool and selecting the new bin command, and we're just going to call this SFO because I know we've got some clips that were shot at San Francisco International Airport. I'm also going to sort my clips based on file name using the pop-up menu at the top of the window. I'm going to select these clips and drag them into a folder. So now I've just created a custom bin. So bins can contain any information I want. I can organize these as however I'd like. But there's also smart bins. Smart bins are metadata-based bins. So we can automatically populate a bin based on the clips that you bring in. If you'd like to learn how to add smart bins, watch the video on the media page. But we're going to keep going for this particular tutorial. So the fastest way to edit something is to just drag it to the timeline. I'm going to drag it to the timeline, and it automatically creates the tracks that I need. Now, the default tool is the arrow tool, and that is a position tool. It lets me pick up clips, move them around. It lets me shorten and extend the clips however I'd like. And we're going to be using that for the first portion of this tutorial. All right, I'm going to go into my SFO bin here that we've created, and we're going to get another clip. This clip shows the airplane taking off. Now, in the source monitor, I can click and drag the playhead to decide what portion of the clip I want to use. And when I get the start frame that I want, I just click the Mark In button here in the interface, move the playhead to where I want it to end, and click the Mark Out button. Now I can also use the keyboard shortcuts I and O, so if I wanted to change this, I could just move the playhead and tap the O key, and that will adjust the out point. Again, I can just drag that down to the timeline, and I've now got two clips down there ready to go. So let's do another clip. All right, so I'm loading this clip into my viewer. Now, if you take a listen to this, it's got some audio.
You can go any slower or no?
Now, this is a documentary, a trailer for a documentary, and I'm really just going to use this as a B-roll. So I don't want to edit the audio in, I just want the video. So I'm going to zoom into my interface here and show you, as I mouse into the clip, an overlay pops up that has a film strip and an audio waveform. If I just grab the film strip, we're going to edit the video only in and not the audio. As I drag the clip over to my timeline viewer, you'll see an edit overlay pops up on the right-hand side that gives me quick access to the 7 most popular types of edits. The default is an overwrite, but in this case, I'm going to use the insert because I want to place this clip between the two clips that are on the timeline. So it's going to insert this clip at the location of the playhead on the timeline. All right, starting to come together. Let's add a little music. In this case, I know that we're working on a trailer. There's already a score for it, so I'm going to just drag this down. Now notice that DaVinci Resolve automatically creates the track for the audio that I'm dragging in and places it on the timeline. Now, I'm going to go in here and we're going to change the color of the clip. If I right-click on it and select Change Track Color, I can make it blue. Now in this case, I like to keep my work organized by color coding things. So all of my dialogue is going to be green, all of my music is going to be blue, and sound effects, when we get to them a little later, are going to be yellow. All right. Down here in the track header, I also want to show you a couple of additional tools that are going to be really important. So first is the auto select button here that I'm clicking on in the middle. So this button basically tells me that a track is enabled or that it's armed for edit operations, which means if I do something like an insert edit, it's going to affect this track. Let me show you. If I go to my toolbar and I select the Insert Edit button here, it's going to edit the clip that I've got in the source viewer into the timeline, and it split my audio, moving the rest of it down. I don't want to do that because I want to keep my soundtrack intact for this edit. So I'm going to undo that. When I turn the auto select button off, the track has been disarmed or disabled for edit operations. So now when I go and do that same edit, it will edit the airplane clip into the timeline, but it'll leave the audio alone. Okay, one more thing I want to show you down here, and that's the lock button. The lock button lets me do, as its name implies, lock a track and all of its contents so that it can't be edited, moved, or anything else while I'm working. So these two tools, the lock and the auto select tools, are really important as you start to edit longer, more complex projects, because they're the two tools that are going to help you manage and maintain the sync relationships you have between your clips. All right, let's zoom out a little bit and keep going. All right, let's take a listen to this.
A documentary about.
Okay, the first thing that I notice is that my audio is very loud. So before I go any further, let me just unlock that for a second, and I'm going to adjust the level. There's a white line over the audio waveform, and that's my level, and I can just grab that and I can just drag it down very quickly to adjust the levels, and I'm going to lock that up again.
The airplanes changed the world. It was really important to go out.
Okay, there's a nice big swell in the music, and I want to deal with that later because I really want to accent or emphasize that particular part of the music. So I'm just going to drop a marker onto my timeline to leave myself a note to do that later. To add a marker, I can go to the marker menu here, and I can just select a marker. In this case, I'm going to drop a yellow one. I could also tap the M key. That will bring up the marker dialog box. And in this case, I'm going to type sound effects and leave myself a note to add a big drum hit. I'm going to click on done. And notice up here in the timeline, there's an overlay that shows me the marker time code, its name, and the description of the marker. There are a couple of other options up here. The three-dot menus, which you'll see in other places of the interface, give us different options for that selected panel. In this case, we're showing marker overlays. I could also show timecode overlays, which shows me all of the source timecode for any clips under the playhead. Let me just turn those off for now. We're not going to need them for a little while. All right, so let's grab another interview clip and drop this into the timeline. So I'm going to select the portion of the clip that I want in the source viewer first. Now, when you're cutting dialogue or interview clips like this, it's really helpful if you can see the audio waveforms with the video, because then I'll know exactly where sentences are starting and stopping, and it'll help me cut faster. So if I go to the option menu here in the source timeline, in the source viewer, I can turn on audio waveforms and see those with my video at the same time. So I'm just going to play back a little and listen to where I might want to cut this.
It was real. If it was possible.
Okay, so it looks like he starts a new sentence about here. I don't want his I just want when he starts a sentence with the word if. So I'm using the J, K, and L keys to go forward and backwards. L goes forward, J goes backwards, and K stops it. And I can just tap to get exactly where I want it. And once I find the exact moment in time that I want to mark, I can tap the I key for my endpoint. Let's play through to see where we want to stop.
If it was possible to shoot it, we wanted to go shoot it. If we couldn't get the shot or the weather wasn't right, we would either go back to that location, stay at that location longer, or it didn't make the movie.
Or it didn't make the movie, he said. I want to end the clip there, so I'm going to click O for an out point. All right, so in addition to the keyboard shortcuts and the toolbar for doing different edit types, insert, overwrite, and replace here, I've shown you the edit overlay. There's another edit we can do, and this is an append at end. In this particular instance, the playhead isn't at the end of the timeline. It's in the middle of a clip, and I want to put this clip at the end. So I just use the append at end command, and it goes straight to the end. Now this clip is looking a little long, so I think I want to cover it with a little bit more B-roll. So let's go get another clip from our San Francisco folder. I'm going to double click that to load it in the timeline, and we'll just take a couple of seconds of this. Now if I know exactly what I want to take from my clip, whether it's an absolute timecode value or maybe it's a relative timecode value, I can type those in instead of using the mouse. So for example, right now if you look at the top right of the source viewer, we're at 14 seconds and 16 frames. If I wanted to go forward 2 seconds, I could just type +2, let's go forward 2 seconds and 8 frames. It'll move the playhead forward 2 seconds and 8 frames. If I want to go back 3 seconds, I type -300. If I want to go exactly to the 16-second mark in this clip, I just type 1600 without a plus or minus, and it moves to that absolute timecode position. So let's just set our in point here. We'll go +2 seconds and 8 frames. I'll go out. And now we've entered exactly the timecode values that we want. I'm going to just overwrite that into my timeline, and you can see it here. Now let's look at some of the other tools on the toolbar. The first portion of the toolbar contains my editing and trimming tool, so the arrow or the position tool, the selection tool, is what we've been using. We've also got the trim tool, which we're going to get to in a minute. And then we've got a razor blade, which lets us slice up clips on the timeline, and then I can switch back to my selection tool and move them about. So in this case, I'm just going to move some of the dialogue from the interview under the B-roll so it's a little more evenly spaced. In addition, you see new tools here for snapping and linking and things like that. So as I move, you can see that when I get close to the edge of another clip, it automatically snaps into place. If I turn that off, it doesn't snap anymore, and I can position it wherever I want. Another really nice feature of the snap tool is that I can use the keyboard shortcut. So after I've started dragging, I can toggle snapping on and off with the N key so that I can move it wherever I want. And then when I release the mouse button, it toggles back to its previous state. So that's just a really handy and quick way of working with the snapping. All right, let's do another shot here. We're going to add a few more shots. I'm going to go into my bin, and I've got clips 5, 6, 7, and 8. I'm just going to select all of them, and we're going to drag them to the end of our timeline. Okay, so the timeline's getting a little long now. Things have gone off screen, so let me show you how we handle different view options in the timeline and how we handle zooming as well. There is a zoom slider here in the toolbar, so I can just slide this up and down to zoom as needed. You can also zoom in and out with the Command plus and Command minus keys. Really important keyboard shortcut to learn is Shift Z. Shift Z acts like a toggle. It zooms you all the way in or all the way out. So if I hit Shift Z, it takes me to the full timeline. It fits the screen. It's basically a fit to fill. If I tap Shift Z again, it zooms me right back into where I was. So the Shift Z toggle is really great. There's also the timeline view options menu here in the toolbar. And this lets me turn on and off different features that affect the look of the timeline. So I can adjust track heights, I can turn waveforms on and off, and you can customize that however you'd like. All right, so now I've got a bunch of clips on my timeline. Let's talk about organizing and moving clips around. If I wanted to swap clips, maybe I want to put clip 8 before clip 5, you could, of course, pick all of these up, move them around, and drop it down. But I don't want to do that. What I want to do is I want to show you how our swap and shuffle tool works, because it's the fastest way to rearrange clips on your timeline. Just by holding down the Shift and Command key, I can pick a clip up and I can drop it down, and everything else slides out of the way. So I'm just reordering these clips with Shift and Command, and we've gone 5, 6, 7, 8. We've turned it into 8, 7, 6, 5. without having to move any clips. So a lot of what you see in the editing interface for DaVinci Resolve is designed to speed up your workflow by removing unnecessary steps. For example, let's look at this clip on the timeline. This clip on the timeline, I can tap I and O to set an in and out point on my timeline, and that's going to let me see the duration of that clip here in the timeline viewer. That's the duration, 2 seconds and 10 frames. I want to replace that clip with something else. So let's go get another clip here in our media pool, and I've got this great clip of, sorry, I accidentally deleted that clip. Let me just undo that. Okay. So I've got this great clip of the plane, the water plane flying overhead. So we're going to just set an endpoint, and I want this to be about 1 second and 15 frames, maybe a little longer. All right, we'll start there. Great. So I've got a clip that is 1 second and 20 frames, and I've got a clip of my timeline that's 2 seconds, that's more than 2 seconds long. If I edit this to the timeline, you'll see that it puts the clip in, but there's a little bit of the old clip left. Well, I could delete that, and then I could ripple or close that gap, but that takes a bunch of steps. So I'm going to undo all of that and show you how to use the ripple overwrite tool. The ripple overwrite tool is designed to replace a clip of one length with a clip of a different length. So all those steps that I just showed you, it does them all in one fell swoop. Let's take a look. When I select ripple overwrite and drop that in, it's going to drop it into the timeline and automatically close the gap for me. Now that I've shown you the ripple overwrite, let's take a look at some of the other trimming tools. So if I go to the toolbar here, the trim tool is the second tool. Now the thing that's really unique about the trim tool is that it's context sensitive. So it changes from a rolling edit tool to a ripple tool, a slip, and a slide tool based on where you're clicking on the timeline. Let me show you what that looks like. If we zoom into our timeline a little bit, as I mouse down to the timeline, notice the cursor is going to change. So when it's on the edge of a clip, it's a ripple tool, which allows me to shorten one side of the edit or the other. And if I'm on in between an edit point, it's a roll tool, so I can make one side shorter and one side longer. Now if I just zoom out again on my screen, as I'm using these tools, you'll see that I get a 2-up display there in the timeline viewer. This is showing me the last frame of the clip on the left and the first frame of the clip on the right. Now, when I click in the middle of the clip, it becomes a slip or a slide tool. When I'm over the icon, it's a slip tool. And basically what this is showing me is it's not going to change the position of the edit in the timeline. So the edit's going to stay exactly where it is, and the length of the edit is going to be exactly the same as it is. What's changing is what's inside of the edit. So as you can see on my timeline, if I zoom in, there's a white outline that shows me the entire clip that I have to work with, and I'm just changing the portion of the clip that is shown here in this slot in the timeline. Now the 4-up viewer shows me the first and last frame of the clip that I'm slipping, and the bottom 2 frames in that 4-up view are the clip on the left and the clip on the right. Now if I drop down a little lower and I click over the name, it becomes a slide tool. And this lets me move the clip without changing it in the timeline. So the only thing that's changing now are the length of the clip on the left and the length of the clip on the right. So you can see those are the frames that are changing in the 4-up view. So that's ripple, roll, slip, and slide. There are dozens of other editing and trimming tools available as well, and we're going to take a look at those now. So let's look at the edit menu at the top of the screen. You can see that I've got a lot of different options here. I can delete clips, I can ripple delete, I can delete all my gaps. The major edit types that show up in the overlay are all here. You can see the keyboard shortcuts for all of them, multicam editing tools, swapping clips. And then under the trim menu, you'll see that we've got a lot of different commands for selecting edit points, for nudging clips, for trimming the start or the end. And let's actually show how the trim start command works. If we go to the beginning of this particular clip in the timeline, I'm going to select it and make sure I hit T to go back into trim. We want to basically remove the first few seconds of this clip.
Yeah. So in this film,
I want it to start when he says, in this film. So I can go to the trim menu, and I can just say, trim the start of this clip to the location of the playhead. So whatever frame is under the playhead is going to become the first frame in this clip, and it's going to move everything down. There you go. Very easy way to change these edits. Now, you can also trim in real time during playback. And this is really great if you want to loop around a certain section and really get precise with your editing. So if you're cutting on action or something like that, you can really get in there and nudge the edit to get it exactly where you need it to be. Let me show you how that works. I'm going to go and turn looping on here in the timeline viewer. And then under the playback menu, there are a lot of commands for different playing. So I can play around the current selection, around the current frame, clips, in and out points, all that stuff. I want to use the play around current frame command. You can see here that the keyboard shortcuts are located on the right side of the menu. This doesn't have a keyboard shortcut. I actually want to use the keyboard for this part of the tutorial, so let me show you how to customize it. Under the application menu at the top left, there's the keyboard customization option. This brings up the window. I can tap on these keys to see what commands are assigned. In this case, I tapped on Shift-Z with the mouse, or clicked on it rather, and you can see that it's assigned to zoom to fit. I can also search for a command. In this case, I want to find the play around current frame command, which I know is in the playback menu, so I can just do a search there and play around current frame. And now I add my keyboard shortcut. So when I add the keyboard shortcut, the Save button is highlighted. It lets me name my custom keyboard set. So I'm going to call this Paul's keyboard and click OK. And now that key's been mapped. At the pop-up here, there is the standard DaVinci Resolve keyboard, and there are other keyboard sets that are predefined in case you're moving to DaVinci Resolve from another piece of software. It just helps you get up and running a lot faster. So I'm going to close that. With my looping turned on, my keyboard now set up, I can select this edit point, and I'm just going to start playing. I'm going to tap the tab key, and then I'm going to just nudge with the keyboard and let this loop around the play point until I get it to be exactly the way I want it. All right. So that is a look at trimming and editing with DaVinci Resolve. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to switch to the version of this project that you may have downloaded if you're following along, primarily because all of the edit points and trim points are precisely done and finished the way we want them for me to move on with the rest of the project. So I'm going to go out to the project manager by clicking on the little house icon at the bottom right, and we're just going to click on the Age of Editing tutorial. And you can follow along. There are several timelines in this project at every step of the way. So as I move through them, I'll highlight which ones we're using so that if you're following along, you'll know exactly where to go. All right, so we're in the transitions timeline. This is timeline number 1, and we're going to look at adding some transitions. If you go to the top of the screen, there are user interface buttons that show and hide different parts of the interface. So if I click the media pool, it turns on. If I click it, it turns off, which gives me more room for my viewers. If I click Effects Library, you can see the Effects Library. You can also click the arrow at the top left of the screen to expand the window so it goes all the way down the side, which is great if you've got really long items. So we're going to look at the video transitions, and we're going to grab the cross dissolve, which is our default. I know it's the default because it's got the red highlight next to it. So I'm just going to drag and drop that onto my clip here. Let's turn off the effects library to make a little more room. Command plus to zoom in, and now I can click on my dissolve and I can customize it simply by dragging the edges to change its length. If I double click on it, it loads in the inspector at the right. And the inspector is again one of those panels that you can show and hide. You can also go into single viewer mode if you don't need to see both viewers. And then we can adjust the dissolve. We can adjust the length. I can adjust the style of the dissolve. In this case, let's make it a film dissolve. You can even adjust whether it eases in or eases out. The default is to be a linear transition. By easing in and easing out, we can make it a curve. So there's our transition. Now, we've customized the transition. If I really like this and I want to use this in other parts of my project, I can save this as a custom transition preset. So let's do that. I'm going to right-click on it and select Create a Transition Preset. We're going to call this Paul's Cross Dissolve. Save that. Now when I go into my effects library, you'll see at the bottom is my cross dissolve, which I can reuse anywhere that I need to in my project. All right, let's go a little further down the timeline. Now in this version of the cut, the the video was edited, we took out a portion of one of his sentences, which results in a jump cut. So I'm going to just play that back for you. I'm actually going to hit Command F, which will take it full screen. Watch his head, where you'll be able to really tell, it's very obvious where we cut out one of his sentences, and it creates a jump cut. So Command F, let's play that back.
Go back to that location or it didn't make
So you see that little hitch on his head?
it moved. It's really important.
Okay. So we're going to fix that. We're going to do that with a different type of transition called a smooth cut. So let me just scroll up in my transition list. I'm going to grab smooth cut and I'm going to drop it between these two clips. I'm going to change the duration of the smooth cut to 4 frames. It really doesn't need a lot of frames to do this. What smooth cut does is it actually uses optical flow image analysis technology to create new frames between the clip on the left and the clip on the right. So it's basically trying to do like a morph between the two clips to smooth out that jump cut. Let's see how it did.
To that location or it didn't make it moved.
So that's much better. We've removed the jump cut and it looks great. So let's go back in and keep moving. All right. Now I want to open another timeline. I'm going to close my effects library here, and I showed you the timeline pop-up earlier, but there's another way that we can load multiple timelines or different timelines, and that's by going to the Timeline View Options menu and turning on Tabbed and Stacked Timelines. So you see here, once I've done that, it's added a tab at the left above the timeline. I can click the plus button and now open another timeline. So here's my audio timeline. I can pick the tabs up, I can reorder them and move them around. I can continue opening additional timelines. I can even stack them. So if I click the stack button, I can stack multiple timelines together. Now we're running out of screen real estate, so I'm going to make them smaller. So this is great if you need to copy and paste or move quickly between different timelines or different scenes in a larger project. Using stacked and tabbed timelines lets you do that very quickly. I'm just going to close these up and make these a little bigger again so that we can continue working. We're going to work on some audio now. All right, let me just move these elements. All right. So let's go into our audio timeline. So if you're following along, you can do that. And you can see that I've got here a note to put in the big drum hit. So we're going to do that. In order to do that, I need to add another track. So down here, if I right-click in the track headers at the left, I can add a single track and choose its format, or I can add multiple tracks at once. The multiple track window lets me change the number of audio and video tracks I want to add. In this case, I really just want to add one track below the first one, and we want to make it mono to add our sound effect. So it's just added another track for me. I'm going to go into the media pool. Let's just tidy this up a little bit so we have some more screen real estate. Okay. I'm going to go into my audio and look for my big drum hit. There it is right there. We're going to drop that down on the timeline. And I want this to be yellow like the rest of my tracks, so we're going to just color that really quickly. And let's zoom in on that. I'm going to zoom in really far. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to show you when I'm working with video, I can only move the video in single frame increments. But when it comes to audio, I can actually move the audio in subframe increments. So I can precisely time this drum hit to exactly the frame that I want. So I'm going to move that there. Let's zoom out a bit and take a listen.
Shoot the real world.
Okay, the drum hit sounds great, but what doesn't sound great are these sound effects, because they're way too loud. So let's open the mixer and adjust those. I'm going to move this up a little bit to make some more room so we can see these tracks. You can reorganize or resize any portion of the interface just by dragging between windows, so you can really make this look however you'd like. And if at any time you want to reset the user interface, you can just select Reset UI Layout from the menu. Okay, let's turn on our mixer. So here's our mixer. This is the same mixer that we have on the Fairlight page. It will show you the levels of each track playing under the playhead. You can see that our sound effects are quite loud on this particular clip with the jet taking off. Now, I could adjust the level on the entire track if I wanted to, But in this case, I want to just adjust the clip. So like I did earlier, I could move that line down, but I'm going to just go into the inspector by turning that on, and we're going to look at the audio. Let me select the audio clip. And here you can see that we have clip volume, clip panning, clip pitch, and an equalizer on every single clip in the timeline. Now, you may notice that depending on the resolution of your particular screen, that you may want to show and hide different parts of the interface to make some room for you to work. The good thing is that it's completely customizable. So in this case, I'm going to change my mixer from an audio mixer to meters just to give me a little timeline back. Now, these meters just show me the output of the entire program, not the individual tracks. All right, we're going to drop this volume down substantially by about 19 decibels. And we're just going to close up the inspector and take a listen. Okay, so that's a more appropriate volume for the sound effects. Now, if I've got something that I want to do on multiple clips, I can copy and paste this clip, and I can select the clips that I want to paste to, and I can paste attributes. So this works for audio and video. I can paste attributes like opacity, position, scaling, rotation, and in this case, volume for the audio, from one clip to multiple clips. So now I just paste it, and they're all matching. All right, so that's a little bit about the mixer, the meters, some audio levels. In this particular clip, this next clip,
It was really important. Every shot.
we've got the biplane flying in. And what I really want to do is I want to just animate the level of this sound effect of the engines. So let's zoom in on that. We're going to make these audio tracks a little taller. Okay. And I'm going to option click here in the clip to add keyframes that then allow me to adjust the audio level. So now as the plane flies in, the volume of the engines will increase.
It was really important. Every shot was original, and then everything.
Okay, so that's a little bit for level automation here on the edit page. And then the last audio thing that I'm going to show you right now is around this clip here. We smoothed out the video using the smooth cut transition, but the audio has a definite blip because it's two different levels where we cut it. Have a listen.
To that location, or it didn't make.
One more time.
You would either go back to that location, or it didn't.
So I want to just clean that up. And to clean that up, I'm just simply going to use the fade tool just to drop the level at the beginning of that a little bit. Now, the fade handles you see are at the ends and beginnings of any video or audio clip. It's just a really fast way to quickly fade audio or video in or out. Let's have a listen to see if that worked.
To that location, or it didn't make the movie. It was really.
That sounds great, so we're going to move on. Let's switch to the next timeline, which is animate and retiming. I'm just going to adjust the height of our audio tracks, make them a little smaller because we don't really need them right now. And let's take a look at this clip here. This is a time-lapse clip, and we're going to speed it up. So I want it to run at about twice the speed that it's currently running. Now, in DaVinci Resolve, we can do constant speed changes or variable speed changes. The variable, as its name implies, lets the speed of the clip change over time. So we'll start with the constant speed change. To change the clip speed, you just right-click and select Change Clip Speed from the menu. In this case, we're going to make it 200%, twice as fast, which will also make it half as long. So I'm going to select the Ripple Sequence checkbox, and what that's going to do is instead of leaving a gap in my timeline, it's going to ripple that closed. It's going to close the gap because we're making the clip shorter. So now as I do that, it ripples that in and it comes in. Let's take a look. Okay, so that's running at about twice the rate that it was. I'm going to zoom in just a bit, and let's say that about 2/3 of the way through, we want that to change from 200% back to 100%. So we want to turn this from a constant speed change into a variable speed change. I'm going to turn on my retime controls by right-clicking on the clip. And what this allows me to do is it allows me to set new speed points. So basically, I'm setting a point in time at which the speed is going to change. So as I do this, you can add as many speed points as you want. So I could have the speed go from 200% to 50% to 100% or any number that I choose. So on the second portion of this clip, I'm going to change the speed point to 100%. So now, the first part of the clip is running at twice the speed, and the second part of the clip is running at regular speed. Let's look at that. Okay, I'm going to go full screen just to show you that. You'll notice that it's an abrupt change when it goes from 200% to 100%. Now, if I want to smooth out that change, I can right-click and open the Retime Curve window. Now, what you see here is a curve editor built right into the timeline. The curve editor can be used for just about any parameter that can be animated here in DaVinci Resolve. So right in context with the clip, I get to adjust its keyframes and add curves. Now, you can see here by looking at it that we're going at 200% up to this keyframe, and then it's a sharp and abrupt change to 100%. If I want to smooth that out, I just click on the Smooth button, and now I have handles. So when I bring the handles in, it's more abrupt, and when I bring the handles out, it smooths that line to make it a nice curve, and then we can watch the speed change, and it'll be a nice gradual change from 200 to 100. Okay, that looks great. Let's close this stuff up. I'm going to close my retime curve, close my retime controls, and we're going to move this back up. Now, let's do a little animation. I'm going to reframe this. Let me move this down so we have a little more room to see. We're going to reframe this. I think in addition to the time lapse that we've got going here, I think it'd be more dramatic if we actually did a little push into it as well. So in your viewer menu, your timeline viewer, you can adjust the zoom level here with the drop-down menu. You can also use the scroll wheel or the middle mouse button to adjust your zoom level. I'm going to turn the inspector on. Let's turn the media pool off so we have a little more room. Okay, now we are going to adjust the zoom on this clip. Let me zoom out of my timeline a little. So at the bottom left of the timeline viewer, there is a pop-up menu that lets me turn on-screen controls on for things like transformation and crop. This is really helpful when I'm animating. I'm going to go to my transform controls in the inspector. We're going to drop a keyframe at the start of the clip. And then for the last frame in the clip, we're going to just zoom this up. So we're zooming into the clip. I'm going to turn those overlays off too so they're not in our way. And then if I wanted to change the position, I can just drag this. I can put it wherever I want. I can smooth out the animation path right here on the screen so you can see I've got handles. And I can adjust the ease on that motion path as well by grabbing the handle in the middle. So you've got some really great animation controls here. You can do it visually using the on-screen overlays, or you can do it by the numbers here in the inspector. So however you prefer to work. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's zoom back out, and we're going to go to the beginning of our timeline. Now, in addition to keyframe-based animation, we also have another feature that makes it really easy to do gentle pushes or ins and out onto a clip. So in this particular case, I want to just add a nice little push in just to give the camera some motion. It'll add some dramatic effect and make it look really good. So I'm going to turn on, I'm going to select the clip and turn on dynamic zoom. If we look at the overlays here again in our menu, we've got dynamic zoom controls. And basically what this is showing me are two boxes, a green box and a red box. So the green box is the framing of this clip at the start of the clip, and the red box is where it's going to end. So if I want to start wide, we can start there, and then if I want the shot to end tighter on his face, I can move it there, and then when I press play,
In this film, making a documentary,
you'll see that it's just going to do that move. Now I want to go for something a little more subtle, so we're just going to resize that and then play it back.
In this film, making a documentary about how the airplanes change.
So the benefit of using dynamic zoom is that there are no keyframes. So if I trim this clip, if I make it longer or shorter, or if I add a transition like a dissolve, that's going to add frames or handles to the clip. I don't have to move keyframes or reanimate this. It will automatically just animate to fit whatever is visible in my program. All right, so that's a little bit about retiming and some animation. Let's take a look at some effects. All right, we're going to add another timeline here. We are going to look at titles and effects next. I'm going to shut off my mixer, and I'm going to make my inspector a little shorter so that we can see more of our timeline. And we're going to go down to this clip here at the end, turn my overlays off, and let's add an effect. So if you look in the effects library, you'll see different categories. We've looked at the transitions before. We'll get to titles in a second. There are audio plugins that ship with it called Fairlight effects. So we've got chorus, de-essers, hum removers, all kinds of different plugins. And then you've also got open effects plugins for video. We, of course, work with third-party plugins as well, but we also ship DaVinci Resolve with dozens and dozens of GPU and CPU accelerated plugins to add effects to your video. Now, DaVinci Resolve Studio has the complete set of Resolve effects, and the free version of DaVinci Resolve, which you may have downloaded, has a subset. To learn more about the differences between the two packages, check out our website. There's a comparison document that you can read. In this case, I'm going to just add a Gaussian blur to this clip, and let me scroll down my timeline a little bit so we can see that. All right, so we're going to select the clip. Now notice in the inspector, in addition to the video controls, there's now an Open Effects tab because we've added a filter to this. When I click on that, you can see the parameters for the Gaussian blur. And in this case, I'm going to add a keyframe. We're going to take it to 0, go to the last frame in the shot, and just crank it up. And then I'm going to just set the border so that it replicates the edge pixels so that we get a nice clean image. And now as I play back, it's blurring out to that title. Let's do something fun with the title. So we've got blur filters, color filters, generators, light filters. There's also revival filters for doing things like automatic dirt removal, fixing dead pixels, sharpening, stylization, texturing, warping. We're going to use some light rays, so I'm just going to grab the light rays plugin and I'm going to drop it onto the clip. When I select the clip, its parameters show in the inspector. There's the light rays plugin, and I'm just going to add keyframes for the position here. We're going to just adjust that position, maybe take it to the left a little bit, and then we'll also animate the length of those light rays and the brightness. All right, so that's where it's going to start. Maybe about a second or so later, we will take that all down, adjust the position, take that all down, and make this shorter. So now when we play out, we're going to blur and have light rays on our text. All right, so really easy to add some very cool effects and filters to your video. Let's look at some titles. I'm going to just close this up a little bit and zoom our timeline again. All right, in the titles section, you'll see at the top there are some basic titles that we can add. I'm going to just move this down and we'll add a lower third. We're just going to use the basic title generator. You can add this down, you can extend it, make it as long as you need to. And then just go into the inspector and type your text. Change your font, change the color, and then you can animate that using the animation controls that we used earlier. So if I wanted this to move across the screen, I would do it exactly the same way as I did. But what I really want to show you are the Fusion title templates, because this is a collection of pre-built animated title templates that you can use in your projects. They're really easy to use. Let me show you how. I'm going to delete that title. In the Fusion Titles section here, you'll see there are several dozen templates that we can use. So I'm going to just grab a simple lower third. It's an animated underline template, and we're going to drag this out, turn our on-screen overlays off, and then we're going to change the text. So I'm going to type Brian's name here, and we're going to change the font size. And maybe we'll change the weight of the font. We can go down and change the color of the line and different elements here. Now, what you're seeing here is a title template that was designed and built entirely inside of Fusion here in DaVinci Resolve. So if you go to the Fusion page and look at this title template, you'll see the entire project that makes up, or the entire composition that makes up this animated title. But on the edit page, you only see a limited number of parameters. So if you want to design titles for your colleagues to use, or if you want to design titles for somebody else to use, you can expose only the parameters that you want them to change right here on the edit page. So really fast and easy way
If we couldn't get the shot or the weather,
to take advantage of the power of Fusion built into DaVinci Resolve. So let's look at that.
if we couldn't get the shot or the weather wasn't right, we would either go back to that location or it didn't make the movie.
So that clip looks great. The lower third looks great. The smooth cut really helped smooth that jump cut. The audio now sounds good. And we're pretty much done with our project. This is a quick cut of the trailer for this documentary film. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. There is a complete set of tutorials on our website, so there's one for each page in DaVinci Resolve. Visit blackmagicdesign.com, go to the DaVinci Resolve website, check out the training page, and learn more. Thanks for watching.